Welcome to Unleash Monday. My name is Nadia, and I'm here helping gifted adults thrive. Gifted adults are not just the nerdy math geniuses. They come in all forms and shapes and sizes, and especially gender. The funny thing is, a lot of them don't even know they are intellectually gifted. So, what are the cues? There's a few tell signs, such as suffering from imposter syndrome, wanting to make the world a better place, feeling really strongly about inequality, and a lot more. So I encourage you, if this is something that resonates with you, keep listening, and maybe there's something that you can learn. Don't worry, you don't need to take a test. You don't need to have a certain IQ to be able to listen to this show and take the snippets. Everybody's welcome here. If this is something that resonates with you, please listen and share it with somebody that you think might need this. So I'm so happy you're here, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is a very special person, and I really grew fondly of him. You will see he has such a big heart, and he's such an amazing person, and his story is incredible. Craig and I are both listeners of Kathy Heller's podcast, Don't Keep Your Day Job. Kathy is such an amazing person, and she attracts like-minded people, mostly artists that want to use their passion and create a career out of it. So Kathy offers these amazing 12-week programs where she really gets people going and makes them take action to really get their passion projects and transform them into a profitable business. When I had this idea of starting a podcast, I needed like-minded people. I needed a little bit of a support system, and Kathy was there really helping me getting step by step closer to my goal of actually launching this show. In May, I joined her program, which is called Made to Do This, and this is a shout out to all my peers. It was such an incredible 12 weeks, and this is where I met Craig. Craig was such an incredible human being. He stood out from the crowd, and he just captured my heart, and we started talking. Without further ado, I just want to jump right in and share with you this amazing conversation that I had with Craig, and I hope this inspires other people to do the same. Have a conversation with somebody face to face, even if it's over Zoom, but reach out and make these connections. Don't be shy. Get out of your comfort zone and really start listening and connecting. So here's the interview with Craig. First of all, I want to say thank you for allowing me to have you here on this show. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit more about your background, what you did?
I'm Craig Gustafson. I am a recovering social misfit is the title that I go by. I'm retired U.S. military. My father was also U.S. military, so I grew up thinking that it was normal and that's what everyone's parent did. To make it even crazier, I rode submarines for a living, same as my father. So when I got out of the service and went to work in the private sector, I stayed working for the military for a long time. My specialty was military logistics. And then I got into project management and planning and discovered with one of the companies that I worked for that I'm somewhere on an autism spectrum and I don't communicate well with people.
How old were you at the time?
I was in my 40s.
Wow.
But, for someone who's high functioning, the military was a great place for me because I had a regimen to keep. There were rules to follow. The society was very regimented by class and rank, and everybody had a job to do, and you were expected to do your job and do things on time. And there was a schedule for that. So I did very well. But then I got out and discovered when I worked for this company that I didn't fit well with a lot of society. And they asked me to take a DISC survey. So I was very comfortable with myself. I understood myself, what I wanted to do. But in social environments, I didn't communicate well. So as luck would have it, I discovered a company called The Science of People. And I have taken a bunch of their coursework, and I'm actually working on certification to teach their material, which is what I'm going to do. And the focus of people that I want is people like myself who are either somewhere on some people get annoyed when you call it an autism spectrum. Some people are better off than others, just like you deal with gifted people. Some gifted people don't do well socially either because they're so cerebral that they don't understand everyone else. I'm not that person. I'm not mentally gifted or anything. But after discovering this, I found out that I have family members who suffer from Asperger's. I also have family members who are bipolar and that sort of thing. So, and all of these things are genetic. While I don't have an official diagnosis, I'm somewhere out there. And after my discovery, it's now my mission to bring the mission of the science of people to everybody, because everybody deserves to communicate well with other people. Sometimes we have to. Sometimes we choose not to, and that's okay. Some of us are more outgoing than others. That doesn't mean that I'm afraid of public speaking, because I never have been. It's kind of like singing, I guess. I'm one of those people that just because I can't sing doesn't mean that I won't sing.
I love that. May I ask, so when you worked at this company and they said like, oh, you're socially not compatible or a misfit, like what were the signs or what were the clues? Did they give you like more details?
It was more that awkward in social situations, like I didn't understand all the group dynamics. I was one of those people that would say the right thing at the wrong time or the wrong thing at the right time. Just not very understanding of the environment that I was in. That I'm one of those people sometimes that don't so much care about your feelings. But I'm much better now about reading people, as in body language and social cues, facial expressions, the gist of a conversation rather than just the facts of a conversation. I was someone who just didn't get subtlety very well.
Basically, you really had to learn these skills that come naturally to others, as you said,
It's interesting because my mentor, Vanessa Van Edwards, says she calls herself a recovering awkward person. She said, have you ever walked into a meeting or a classroom and you arrived late and the lesson is already in progress and you know that you get the gist of the material, but you don't really understand what's going on? I feel like I was missing from school the day they handed out the Book of Social Grace.
So, but then you actually got this book basically by attending the courses and you taught yourself.
I've worked really, really hard at this and invested pretty heavily. It turns out that human behavior and how people function in groups and how we communicate, there's a science to it. And like any other science, if you pay attention and you study, you can, like math, you can learn to do math, even if it's not something that's intuitive to you. You may never be a physicist or some kind of theoretical physicist or something like Albert Einstein, but you can at least get through geometry and algebra. So you understand the basic gist of what's going on.
I have a feeling you're actually better than maybe the average person now with all your skills that you developed and now paying more attention and being more aware.
It takes a lot of effort.
I can imagine.
It gets exhausting. It's like forcing an introvert to go to a Toastmasters meeting and actually give a presentation. It's not something that's intuitive, but it's something that I've learned to be better at, largely because when I was in the military, I probably missed out on promotions. I missed out on jobs that I would have liked because no matter where you go, there are some politics, right? And we want to work with people we get along with. In some companies, it's actually easier to get ahead by being liked than being overly competent. You have to have some competence in order to keep a job, but those who do better socially oftentimes get further along or get nicer jobs and, the corner office with the view. And it's really a shame that I missed out on some of that because I always communicated and got along really well with the young people, especially the troubled young people who came in the service for a way to get away from home or an abusive relationship or a family situation or something like that. I was a smart kid, but I wasn't the kid that did well in school because I could do well on a lot of the exams without having to do homework. But homework was compulsory. It was one of the things you were expected to do. And I didn't see the point. If I could do the work and I could pass the test, what was the problem? So I've always kind of been my own person.
That sounds like a very gifted person's answer. You know that, right?
Well, in some things I'm not. I get large concepts, and when they do testing of young people in junior high school and high school, I didn't do real well in the higher math itself, but geometry and spatial relations and stuff like that, show you a picture and if you put this together, what form will it make, that kind of thing. I always did really well at that sort of thing. So we're all gifted at something. It's just a matter of finding ikigai. What are you good at? What does the world need? How do you share it with other people and make a living doing it? Because I've reached the point where I'm tired of building someone else's dream and I want to help other people while I build my own. That's where I've arrived.
I want to mention something for the listeners because you just mentioned you probably didn't pay so much attention to other people's feeling and were maybe liked, and that's why you missed out on promotions. But I saw on your Facebook page that you reached out and you did your homework for the course we were doing. And you ask, please, if I've been of any service to you in the past, can you please mention what I helped you with? And so many people, obviously I don't know them, but so many of your Facebook friends mentioned how you touched them, how you helped them, how you mentored them. It really touched me. There's so many people sharing their story of how they thanked you and how you touched them in so many ways. And they mentioned like, oh, I don't even know where to start, Craig. There's so much you did for me. So I just want to mention this to show that you're not that total social misfit.
Individually, I build relationships and friendships, but I've always been awkward in groups of 5, 6 people. Didn't understand people being cliquey because my wife thought that I had absolutely lost my mind when I sent that out to everyone that I knew on Facebook. Was like 550 people. I think the most interesting thing about that wasn't the responses themselves. It was that the people that responded were not the people that I thought were going to. It wasn't the people that I had close personal relationships. It was a bunch of young people from my time in the service that I mentored and spent time with them, either because they were having a relational crisis or they were struggling with the military regimen or they were having financial problems or something like that. Someone took me under their wing when I was a young person like them, and I've never forgotten that. Makes me like all weepy right now. There were people that invested heavily in me, recognizing that I had the potential to be something and be somebody. It was my mission to repay that. And I think the greatest compliment that I got out of all of that was that someone sent me a personal communication saying that we loved who you are when you were in the service. And we really paid attention to the fact that we knew there were people that you didn't particularly care for personally. And the thing that touched a bunch of us was they were probably the people that you were most kind to. Maybe because they were the most disenfranchised, but I went out of my way to not play favorites. And I probably, in an effort to not play favorites, was actually better to the people that I didn't care as much for personally, because I didn't want to be that guy who, always had his little pet person that was always the person that did well. And because that always just drove me to distractions. I hated it. And when other people did it. The nice thing about the military, while it has all of these things where you leave home and you spend a lot of time gone, it's hard on marriages. It took my first marriage. But it's kind of one of the more pure meritocracies. If you work hard and you do the things that are expected of you and you bring other people with you, anybody can do well. Do you like Zig Ziglar? Do you know who that is?
No.
He's kind of a help guru. He said, you can have anything in life that you want as long as by getting it, you are helping other people get what they want. So you're not being selfish. I have always taken that to heart.
I can hear that. And the world clearly needs more of people like you, Craig. I love your story so much.
I just want to be helpful and make a difference to other people like myself. My life is so much more filled with color now that I have better relationships and better communications with other people. Part of the homework assignments were to go find groups of people with your own interests or your own struggles. I spent time on some of the sites where young people with Asperger's are on there, and some of them are just so unhappy because they don't understand the social graces of a lot of people in society, and they have a hard time and are often bullied for being different. Sometimes it doesn't matter how smart we are. Society wants us all to conform to a system. So those that don't are kind of ostracized, and it's really a shame because some of them have so much to offer. It's interesting because Seth Godin, who's just a brilliant person, he has ADHD. And just so many people, they think that people like Albert Einstein may have had Asperger's. So he's a brilliant person, but didn't communicate well with people. After World War II, he was actually offered to be the prime minister of Israel. And he said, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I have neither the desire nor the social skills for such a job." Realizing that he wasn't a socially gifted person as much as he was brilliant. Social skills denied the world of people who are brilliant problem solvers in other ways. So I'd like to help some of the people like me escape that bondage. But the other group of people I really would like to spend time with are young people getting ready to get out of university or college here who don't have a lot of communication skills because they don't communicate on a personal level with people. If all of your younger days you spent with your face buried in a phone or texting your friend or communicating by social media, how do you do a job interview and do well? How do these people have romantic relationships when they've never had personal communications with people? You can't maintain a relationship like that. And so many young people are disenfranchised because they go from relationship to relationship thinking that either they're going to become someone they're not or someone else is going to change to conform to what they want. And they don't do well communicating, and they don't do well with the fact that it's okay that you and I don't agree on everything. But we can have a discussion and be friends. Thank God my wife is the most caring, giving person on earth, or I'm certain by now she would have killed me. But a lot of people struggle with that. Sometimes my own children have struggled in relationships because they don't communicate on an individual level like that. It's so sad that so many young people are suffering this way.
What do you think is the most important point when you say communication and communicating with somebody else? Is there like the one thing you say, listen, this is the most important thing?
You have to be able to read the emotions of another person and understand the meaning of what they said and the context it was said in, not just the words. Which is part of the reason that people get feelings hurt in group texts or by texting people, because there's no context. The words you say, depending on the inflection of your voice, are not hurtful, or they can be very hurtful. But there's no context for any of that when you're speaking to someone on social media. And they struggle with that personally because they don't have a lot of experience doing it.
Do you think now that the world has moved from more, personal interaction to all this online space, is it more difficult for people with Asperger, or is it easier? Or is it the same? Is now everybody struggling? What do you think?
That's an interesting question, because I think that the world has gotten so small, like you and I are thousands of miles apart having a conversation in real time.
It's awesome.
20 years ago, you wouldn't even think that we could do this. One of us would have to get on a plane and spend a day traveling to meet the other. But I think it's made our communication a lot less personal in a lot of ways. Work can reach out and just touch you at any time of day. You can get any knowledge you want, just asking your phone for it. But that doesn't mean knowledge isn't the same as understanding, right? You and I understand each other right now and are smiling and having a nice conversation because we can see each other and our facial expressions and all that over the screen. But it's not the same as having a phone conversation. This is much more personal, which is why people in business or international relations would go and visit each other personally. I think that the more connected we've become, the less personal some of our communication is. And people get used to having friends. I mean, it makes me sad every time I go to a restaurant and you see young people going to dinner and they're either not talking to each other or they're having a conversation over their own phones rather than speaking to each other. It's sad. I saw, living in America, there's a bunch of SUVs running around. I was on the freeway a couple of years ago, and I made this observation to friends that there were 8 young women in this car, and everyone except the person driving were on their phone. Why can you not have a conversation with the people that you are with? It's like the news that we consume now. We don't actually listen to a program. We get it in 150 character bytes. Even if they're factually correct, doesn't really give you context or a meaning behind it or the larger picture. And I think that a lot of personal communication has become that. So to complete the circle, I think that there's a lot of young people with Asperger's or some high functioning form of autism that I think have the same struggles that they've had for a long time, except now a lot of other people have them too. So maybe there's a little more empathy or understanding for people who are not the same as you. We've had to learn a lot about other people's cultures too, which we didn't have to do 20 years ago. Unless you left, because I was in the military, when I left and I went someplace like Gibraltar or Spain or Italy, I had to learn to fit into the culture there to be accepted or to order dinner or whatever I wanted to go and do. But it's not something that I stayed at home that I would ever been exposed to. And my life is just so much richer because I had to go and do it. But now the whole world has to do that in order to do business, which in that way, I guess the larger global community can be a blessing. But I think there's still a lot of room for misunderstanding there too.
I completely agree.
20 years ago, you and I would never have met to have a conversation and become friends.
No, probably not.
No, definitely not. You were in a landlocked country and I was in the Navy. How would I have gotten there?
Maybe in Gibraltar.
Maybe in Gibraltar, which is one of the more interesting places that I've ever been in my life. But that's a discussion for another day. What do you think? 20 years ago, the idea of forming a podcast to help other people understand each other and to bring meaning like you're doing wouldn't have happened either because the technology didn't even exist to do it.
I think 20 years ago, we didn't even have the smartphones, right? They were like
No.
2007 or something.
Yeah. I think the kids that worked for me started getting iPhones in 2006, 2007.
Yeah, that was
crazy.
Really the turning point. It's the same timeline as, the whole financial crisis at the time. So it's not that long ago. We forget that. We forget that we integrated it so easily and we got addicted so fast.
Well, the halo effect and the proximity effect, right? The things that are most recent to us are the things that we hold the most value to. The things that you identify with because they're either from a strong memory in your past or recent to you are the things, and our own body lies to us, right? The things that our mind does, your mind is set up to keep you safe, not to keep you happy.
Yeah.
So a lot of the decisions we make out of fear, or we remember things that either scare us or frighten us or give us some sort of consternation rather than the happy things that happen. That's what our mind focuses on, which is interesting how we work that way. But sometimes even understanding that, it doesn't make it easier.
No, it does not.
Except perhaps in hindsight.
In hindsight.
Just like in my old life, we were actually discouraged from keeping journals.
Oh, okay. What was the reasoning?
Well, because we went places that you probably didn't want us remembering the specifics of. And yeah, so this whole learning to journal thing is a whole new life to me. And I need a new notebook already.
You're liking it?
I didn't expect the recurring themes to be what they are.
It's amazing what comes out.
Sometimes you find clues into what's important or what's going on in the things that you mentioned in passing more than one time and don't really pay attention to until you see a pattern when you go back and look. So this is interesting, although it is much more difficult and confronting than I would have thought in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, as you say, out of fear or whatever reason, they don't choose to do this deep work and they don't choose to actively look. I also had a conversation with somebody that's a coach for the gifted people. And she also said sometimes even though the gifted people tend to soak up all the information and love new information and love to learn, but when it comes to their own giftedness, they kind of put their head in the sand and try not to deal with it because it's scary, it's frightening, and it's difficult to deal with. So
It's
I
confronting.
think, yeah, it's confronting. But that is actually where you grow, and where you, once you do the work and once you work through that, it gives you clarity and gives you a path and it gives you meaning. I think it's the most important thing, even though it's uncomfortable, really going out of your comfort zone and working through that.
Some things I discovered about myself were things about my own personal limiting beliefs and things that people had said to me and messages that don't serve me anymore that I've always just accepted as truth. Who are you to do this? A lot of the education system isn't set up to set us up to be critical thinkers. It's set up to teach us to be compliant workers and accept what other people tell us rather than questioning the validity or the message and discovering whether it's true or whether it's not true and why.
I found a lot of limiting beliefs that it didn't even occur to me that it was a limiting belief, right? That's the true nature of them. You believe something, and then only when you start looking and searching for them, you're like, is this really true? Why do I believe this?
Some of Kathy's recent guests, I don't remember her name now because, like you, I'm not someone that names stick to. I would probably forget my own if I didn't have to write it every day. She said, asking yourself, those questions, is this true? Is this really true? And what would it mean for you if it weren't true? How would that change what you thought and change your story? Do you know who Mel Robbins is?
Yes.
Her whole thing, not just the 5-second rule, but get this garbage out of your head. One of the things that she said that resonated with me is be careful how you speak to yourself. If you spoke to someone else the way you speak to yourself, you would have no friends. The whole world would think you were a jerk. Why are you doing this to yourself? Although that is confronting too, but it's true. I finished the third door not that long ago. I picked it up and I read like 90% of it in a day because I couldn't put it down. I'm that way. So this week I started The Big Leap.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read it?
The Big Leap, not yet. But The Third Door, I listened to the audiobook and it was amazing. I listened to it in one day.
Amazing. What is the biggest limiting factor in what you can accomplish is your own belief. It was the big thing of The Third Door, right? What if you are your own biggest obstacle to success? Once again, based on these beliefs that we have. But the big leap, the beginning chapter is, what if you believed in that you could be happy and productive all the time? What would that mean for you? What if you could get to a place where you were productive and contributing, and the bad things in life that happened were something that happened and they weren't a personal attack, and you could treat them that way? What would that mean for your productivity? And what would that mean for your own self-image if you didn't care what other people thought about what you were doing when other people thought you were half crazy? Because you had this thing that you were building. I was listening to a Richie Norton podcast. The Power of Starting Something Stupid is the name of one of his books. And he takes a look at people like Henry Ford. Everyone thought Henry Ford was crazy because he wanted to build this car. Everybody thought Jeff Bezos was crazy for going to Seattle and starting Amazon because they thought it was a great idea for someone who didn't already have a job in business in New York City, right? A great job for someone else. That's crazy. But now these things become normal, and then someone else comes up with a crazy idea that winds up being adopted by the whole world and becoming part of daily life. Like the iPod, right? Before the iPhone. I was one of those people that had a wall full of cassettes and CDs. Now I have a computer that holds more music and audio books and stuff than I could ever put in a room. People thought that what's the point of that, right? There's music on TV and there's music on the radio playing for free, but I mean, not only can you have a lot more of it now, how much has the creative content gone up? How many more people are building creative things now because they can, because the technology has made all of that easy? I'm completely pivoting my life. I was a logistician who did planning, and I qualified as a project manager and all of these things. And none of those things are what I want to do with my life.
So tell us, what are you going to do and what does it look like when you coach somebody? Or are you going to do group coaching or is it individual coaching? Is it virtual? Is it like in person? Do you know yet? Are you still figuring it out? Are you
If I could
looking
do
for...
anything I wanted, I would visit small businesses and do what we're doing right now, having a conversation about not just body language and communication itself, but there's a lot of things that we don't pay attention to, but advertisers do. Things like priming. They promise to act in a certain way, to value certain things. What do we spend our money on? Think about the Cadillac commercial, right? A lot of people that are driving these gigantic SUVs with the big price tags and the big names, is that really what they need, or do they feel a need to be seen? I mean, until recently, I drove a Honda and put 266,000 miles on it. God only knows how many kilometers that is. Probably, well, 10 kilometers is 6 miles. So, I mean, you could probably add another 100,000 kilometers to that, right? In the
I'm
area
so
of
bad at
400,
math. I don't know. I need a
in the
calculator.
area of 400,000 kilometers on an
Is,
old Honda. And everybody's like, well, why don't you replace that? I said, I have other things I would rather spend my money or save my money on rather than a new car. Why would I get rid of something that's paid for that's giving me no trouble? But people don't think that way. Everybody wants the new this and the new that and the greatest thing. And I think sometimes we worry about things that aren't important. But about how we prime people in communications is also really important. You and I were kind to each other when we were texting back and forth, right? How many times have we sent an email to somebody and the subject line was boring, or it's a reply to something and it keeps taking the same subject name over and over? All of that is a missed opportunity, right? Instead of a meeting, instead of you and I having a Zoom meeting right now, we called it a collaboration where both of us were going to learn something about someone else and get the perspective of another person. But you prime and you set up the mood for a conversation before the conversation starts. All of that is missed opportunities, and we throw away our words all the time. I'm much more thoughtful about what I say and how I say it now than I used to be before I started this journey. In the military, everything is very dry and it's in a specific format. And once I discovered that I didn't have to keep that all the time, make it fun. Make someone excited to talk to you. It just smile when you pick up the phone. The person on the other side actually can tell. Just all of these things that I never paid attention to have opened up a completely new world for me. And I think it's important that we share it with other people. How many lives can we make better for not a lot of cost? How do we drive understanding in cultures that we don't organically understand or know anything about? I mean, one of the greatest things I know about your country is the world's greatest tennis player, right?
Roger.
How fun is that? I mean, just not only is he, one of the world's greatest ever tennis players, but he's really a great person and very giving. But unless you knew something about that, you would never know. A lot of these people that have come out just to be amazing human beings, it's just amazing that I don't think people realize how great our capacity is for good with just a little bit of effort, rather than living in fear or not understanding other people and cultures. I think that's really how we make the world a better place at this point.
Yeah, I think that's the only way we can heal this world and make it a better place.
A lot of the world right now is struggling with race relations, and it makes me sad. And people think I'm crazy or that I'm being disingenuous when I say this, but there's only one race. We are all human. People and politicians gain power over us when we fail to believe that, and we allow ourselves to be segmented in ways that make people mad or hurtful. And it's in a lot of people's best interest to keep us not talking to each other and afraid of each other, because that's how they retain power. What if we you and I and people like us and people that may someday listen to this conversation understand that our ability to do good is at least as strong as our ability to not do good. Why can't we just make this a place where we all want to be? And it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be hard. Start with where you are. All of us have a gift. I know that you deal with people that are intellectually gifted, but all of us are gifted. What's your gift? That's what the greatest thing about this whole Kathy thing has been for me, is I knew that I wanted to do this, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know how to organize and build a company and figure out where to find an audience and who my audience would be. Before COVID, I thought that I would take my show on the road and go visit small businesses who are trying to grow and build better relationships with customers, or coaching young people in college how to have good job interviews or communicate better with their peers. I had no idea that I could actually find an audience of people really like myself. Maybe some of them don't want to talk to me. Maybe some of them are afraid to me or of my message, or think that I'm being disingenuous and looking for a handout and I want to take advantage of them. But someone's not going to think that. And I would like to change their life. Like someone changed mine. I don't know why that was so hard to come out, but it was. We have all this technology and so many people use it for ill gains or to take advantage of other people. It's like hackers and social scammers. What could they make the world if they wanted to take their thoughts of stealing from people and actually turned it around to helping the world? They could make just as much money, maybe even more, because people will want to give to them. I had no problem handing my money over to Kathy to enroll in this program because there was a tangible thing there that she could help me with. Why do we have to steal from people rather than finding the good and making things better? Maybe I'm a simple-minded person, but I don't understand.
I think you're the opposite of simple-minded. I think it's such a pleasure to talk to you and hear your thoughts on all of this. Thank you so much for sharing. If somebody feels this is the message they need, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
Well, because I really just got myself a domain name, you can find me at hello@escapingsocialawkwardness.com. If something I said resonated with you, whether you agree with me or you don't disagree with me, I would look forward to having a conversation with you.
I will definitely keep the conversation with you going.
I've enjoyed this immensely, and I think you're an amazing human being for doing what you're doing too.
Oh, thank you. That means really a lot. And thank you so much for taking your time and sharing all of your wisdom.
Thank you for the offer to communicate with you. Everybody has a small thing that they can do, but together we can do anything. A rising tide raises all ships. So if all of us are doing better because we help each other out and we build our own little community, there's a lot of power here. There's a lot of really smart people that know how to do a lot of different things and have different skills here. So by collaborating in a way that you wouldn't normally associate with people, because in your daily life, you tend to be surrounded by people like yourself. Once you reach out and you deal with someone who's good at technology or podcasting or building websites and all these things to help everybody get their message out to each other or the larger world, I mean, if we can all collaborate and have a different perspective but build a greater thing, then everybody's better off and hopefully the whole world will be. I cannot believe that it's been over an hour that we've been chatting.
Oh. Yeah, let's take a break before the next class. It's going to be intense.
Well, who knows? Maybe we'll wind up in a small group room again today.
Yeah, maybe.
That was amazing last time.
That was the universe. I was like, oh my God, this was really the universe.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Craig. And I see you tonight on the screen.
Bye. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. I hope you had an amazing time listening to Craig and I talk about the importance of communication. I hope you enjoyed this show. Please, if this was something that you would like to listen again, I would encourage you to subscribe on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen and leave a review. I'm also very curious to hear what you're thinking about this show. So you can find me on unleashmonday.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at unleash.monday. It's incredible how fast the word is spreading, and I see more and more people following me on Instagram and signing up for the newsletter on my website. I hope this really serves some of you and helps you get over your own imposter syndromes and finding your type of people. Let's keep the conversation going, and I see you in 2 weeks. I can't wait to share the next guest with you. So, bye for now.